charming as being part of the Pacific Rim is, it is no substitute for being engaged in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and the rest of the world. That when you have the fourth largest economy in the world, you don't have the luxury of picking and choosing. I'm really delighted to introduce two very distinguished guests. The first is Ambassador Ukko-Pekka Salmimis, who is the Finnish Consul General here in Los Angeles. As he won't say, but we all know, the consulate here is the jewel in the crown of the Finnish Foreign Ministry, and we are delighted to have him here. The ambassador has responsibility not only for California, but 13 Western states as Consul General. He's an expert in trade and economic-focused issues, and he joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1997. He previously had the great duty, in my opinion, of being ambassador and head of mission to both the OECD and UNESCO in Paris, which is a wonderful place to serve. He was ambassador for Team Finland, involved in export and investment promotion activities for the ministry, and has had a variety of important postings throughout his career. And as I often remind people, being a consul general to the state with the fourth largest economy in the world is much larger than many, traditional ambassadorships to very small countries. So we are delighted to thank Ambassador Salmimis, who's been enormously helpful in organizing and assisting us in arranging meetings for our delegation in Helsinki. Our other guest is Alexandra Lieben, who is a longtime Pacific Council friend and member. She is the Deputy Director of the Berkel Center for International Relations at UCLA, which we consider one of our siblings. So we have a very, very long-standing and mutually beneficial relationship, not only with UCLA, but with the Berkel Center. Her area of expertise or interest in international affairs is related to conflict resolution, mediation. I'm happy she's here and not in Khartoum, where her skills are desperately needed. I don't know, Alexander, if you know Volker Perthes from Berlin, who's the special, he's a German, but he's a special, negotiator for the Sudan, who's a longtime pal of mine. She's very engaged in international conflict resolution, and is also on the board of the Thomas Mann House, which is a German government democracy initiative headquartered, I think, in Los Angeles, which always gives me anything that's here makes me happy. So I'm very happy to hear that. Alexandra is a graduate of UCLA. She is a summa cum laude graduate of UCLA, which is pretty impressive. And as you will see, she's engaging and really, really smart. So I am going to get out of the way. I'm going to let my colleagues and our guests take over. I want to thank all of you for joining us. Once we get back from Finland and Norway, you may see us again so we can report back to the membership about what we learned. But Ambassador Salmimis and Ms. Lieben, I want to thank you both for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so, Alexandra, I think we more or less coordinated that. I will start, if you allow me, by thanking, of course, Pacific Council, Jerry, Sam, and Val, and the team for organizing this event. Yes, the timing is excellent, not only because of the visit of Pacific Council to Finland, but also what's happening in Northern Europe and especially in Finland. But I want to say before I go on that I've been using very much the network of Pacific Council, and many members of Pacific Council have been extremely helpful. So it is something that I highly appreciate. And of course, organizing this event, but together with another institute, Berkel Center, and Alexandra, with whom I've had a great relationship. So I'm happy that this moment is today. But going to the subject, I want to take up two issues. We are talking today about Finnish NATO membership, and we're talking about the situation in Europe. in general. And I want to take up two issues. One is the background, so that we more or less, those who are a little bit less familiar with the process and issue have a so to say, background to talk and to ask. And the second one, the issue that I want in my brief introduction take up is Finland as a member of NATO. What kind of member is to be expected to actually already having joined the alliance? About the background, I want to highlight actually 4 turning points in the Finnish history during the last 105 years. In all of these, Russia has played a major role, or at least a catalyst. The first one is 1917. In the turmoils of Russian Revolution, Finland declared her independence. And the second was in 1939, the aggression of Soviet Union against Finland, which has many similarities what we saw last year when Russia invaded Ukraine. And the conclusion of this aggression and the conclusion of World War II from the Finnish perspective was maintaining our independence. The third one is year 1995, accession of Finland to the European Union. It happened after the Cold War had ended and the Soviet Union had collapsed. And from that on, Finland became from a neutral country to a military non-aligned. And the fourth milestone is actually started last year with, in May, Finland submitting the application to NATO, caused by the Russian aggression in Ukraine. And this month, earlier this month, April 8 exactly, Finland becoming formally the 31st member of NATO. And after that, we're of course military aligned. So that's the historic background with these 4 major steps. And the 2 reasons for Finland submitting the application a year ago was of course that yes, Russia's aggression changed our security environment fundamentally. And the strong and immediate impact of this aggression was that the public opinion in Finland changed not in weeks, but in days. There had never been a public poll where the result was that a majority had supported Finnish NATO membership before. But after the events of last year's February, already in the beginning of March, the vast majority of Finns were favorable to the submission of the application to NATO. And the second thing of this result was that, of course, politicians, they hardly can ignore the public polls, but there was a strong consensus immediately among all the political decision makers, all the parties, that because of the changed situation, our security arrangement were inadequate, and we needed to think outside of the box. And of course, the change risk potential caused by the Russia was so significant that the decision was clear. An efficient but thorough democratic process was implemented, and on May 17th, submission of the application together with Sweden. Okay, that was the first part of the background, and now after being a member of the alliance, it is of course very legitimate and pertinent to ask what kind of member we consider to be. And I have 5, I will take up briefly 5 dimensions or layers, what you want to call them, it's up to you. But I will start with the military capabilities. And hardware, of course, is always in the core. Finland has an extremely strong Air Force. Currently, we have 62 F-18 fighters, and we last year, actually it was December 21 when Finland made a purchase of not less than 64 F-35 fighters, which is the best that you can get. and it's an extremely big investment for Finland, over $10 billion worth. But also our army is strong, and I'm not saying this because I'm a Finn and a Finnish diplomat, but because of the international factual comparison. For example, we have a significant number of tanks, more than 200, which is actually more than all the Nordic and Baltic other countries, 7 countries altogether. And our artillery is 3 times more than all the 7 Nordic Baltic countries together. So we have invested in defense. Finland never relaxed after the Cold War ended. We have never had the luxury of doing that, and that explains our orientation to defense and security policy. Human dimension is, of course, extremely important. There is a general conscription in Finland, and we have a model of comprehensive defense. That means that we are prepared to defend all of Finland, which you can see in the map. And it is, of course, a significant amount and an area that is to be protected. We have a wartime power of 280,000 soldiers, which is also in European and global comparison big. And we also have a 900,000 reserve, which is the biggest in Europe. And it's one of the biggest in the world. And according to my data, which I looked up, it's twice as big as the US, the active reserve. Third thing, which has, after talking about hardware and human capacity, I take the mental dimension. I have to take up a poll result, which I think is very illustrative. 80% of Finns, those who have done the military service, are willing to defend the country with weapons, even if the end result seems unsure what will be the outcome of the conflict. And in comparison, in Germany and France, the percentage numbers are between 20 and 30. And history plays a big role. I refer to the conclusion from the Finnish point of view to the Second World War. When Soviet Union attacked in November 39, it had vast overpower, 3 times more troops, and 300 times more tanks and 30 times more of aircrafts. But Finland prevailed, and we stopped the invasion. We lost some of our area, about 10%, but the main result for us was that we kept the independence. And all this is recorded in the collective memory of Finns, of the families. Each and every family has a story to tell, a tragic or heroic or both. And I think this should be underlined and remembered when we talk about the capacity to defend the country. And I think Ukraine is showing now, when they are defending their country, what kind of impact there is if you are defending your family and your house and your area. So Finland is a fully NATO compatible and interoperable, because we have been a close partner with NATO already from 1994. And I want to mention also our special capabilities related to Arctic conditions, technical, tactical, etc. Very briefly, 3 other elements to this Finland as a member: technology and other non-military capabilities, cutting-edge technology in 5G, 6G. Finland is a home country for Nokia, and Nokia is one among the 3 largest companies providing 5G and in 6G, in future 6G networks. Together with the Swedish Ericsson, they actually contribute to 2/3 of the global 5G outside of China. Quantum-enabled technologies and artificial intelligence as well. And the unique comprehensive security model that Finland has, and that is the idea of authorities, private sector, civil society, academia working together, a whole of society approach to security of the nation. It has similarities with the Israeli model, but it is unique. And cybersecurity capabilities and also capabilities countering hybrid threats. And the hybrid threats, it's something that I think we are expected to see them more. It can be, as we're now seeing, intelligence activities in the Baltic Sea from the Russia, spreading of false information, maybe, which had happened already some years ago, organized migration influx at the border of Finland, and of course, interference in logistics chains, sea transport, energy, and data networks. So the preparedness for this is there. Geography, Alexander will put the map on the table, on the screen. As you can see, the border with Russia is long, more than 800 miles. And it is also what needs to be said, it's a very forested area. So that does not compare with the, for example, with the border of Russia and Ukraine, where you have vast plains, and it's totally different landscape and topography. And of course, our toes are in the Baltic and our head is in the Arctic area. And that is something that provides then special conditions to protect the country. You can see the two islands there, one in blue and one in white. The blue one is the Åland Island, and that is a demilitarized island based on an agreement in 1856 dating after the Crimean War. And that is an interesting issue in the current discussion, since it's non-military, it is demilitarized, but of course, in the situation of crisis, Finland has the interest, but also the responsibility to defend the island. And the white island of Gotland Island, which is Swedish territory and extremely strategically in the middle of the Baltic Sea. I will finish my introduction by just saying that, or maybe summarizing, that we consider us being now a couple of weeks member in the alliance, that we are a net contributor, not a consumer of security. And our membership is not directed against anyone. It's about maximizing our security and also contributing to the collective security of Europe. And we consider that the membership of Finland actually does contribute to the stability and security, not only in the Baltic Rim area, but in Europe in general. So thank you. I think I will finish here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I will briefly take us through NATO. Just wanted to share this map with you so you get a sense of Putin's misgivings and really the size of the bloc. In addition, what we cannot see here, of course, is United States and Canada. But when we look at the beginnings of NATO, it was founded in 1949, really in response to the Soviet Union as a counterweight, as a multilateral defense alliance, and with now 31 members and 32 once Sweden joins, 22 of them in the EU. So the North Atlantic Treaty has 14 articles, including the very important security guarantee of Article 5, which is what Finland just added to its defensive arsenal, essentially, beyond what the EU membership itself offers. And Article 5 requires collective defense, right? If one member gets attacked, then all members are considered attacked. And that means NATO as a whole moves up. There have been longstanding squabbles, as probably everybody in the audience is aware of, between the United States, sort of that is the preeminent militaristic member of this alliance, and the European counterparts about contributions. And the 2% contribution of the 2% of GDP contribution that Ambassador Salmimis mentioned, that Finland is already contributing, is not universally coming from the EU partners. So, but the war in Ukraine has really stepped up Europe's commitment to doing that. And so the realization that this being the first land war again since World War II requires an emancipation in some ways from the United States and sort of really arming themselves and understanding that everybody needs to pull their weight in a different way. What this situation also has brought forth again is for NATO Supreme Allied Commander Christopher Cavoli, who is in charge really of coordinating the military efforts, that he once again it's an interesting task because he has to coordinate the militaries across the continent, and that also means negotiating. That's part of the issues. All of the different countries, right? It's national, multilateral, but it's also multi-jurisdictional. It's like between the civil sectors, and government and the military. It's like, how do you move armed forces? How do you move weaponry across borders? How do you also step up, right, and fix infrastructure and get the weaponry in place? So it is really overall quite a big challenge. NATO has changed its policy, essentially moving from deterrence by retaliation, which in the past has meant if a country invades, then we are waiting sort of for the bigger forces to join and push the adversary out again beyond one's borders, to now a policy of, I would say, enhanced deterrence by denial of attack, meaning don't even let anybody cross your borders. That means stepping up military presence, spending, commitment, and greater integration with the American military. So the challenges, right, for the first time again, having to really defend its own territory against real threats and perceived threats or feared threats. There are certain issues that we see already playing out. And one is, and Ambassador Salmimis mentioned this as well, is the support, right, that this effort gets. Will it be sustained in sort of as this war drags on, as it drains resources across the continent, but also NATO? How much can NATO let itself get weakened if production cannot keep up with need on the battlefield? And then also, Europeans, we like to bicker. So can we resist that temptation? Yeah, so whether it is about cost sharing, burden sharing, right? Who contributes what? But also including right now, it's there's a flood of Ukrainian grain and other agricultural products coming across the border into Poland, into Slovakia. It's the farmers there pushing back. It's no, you're depressing our prices. So now it's figuring all of these different things out. How can we get it through the country without adverse impact, right, on the local population, and still sort of get it to the countries that actually need it in the populations? All of this having to use a land route because Russia closed so many ports and so much ability to ship it out. And then again, it's how long can we keep up the support if it starts to actually really drain national resources, but also alliance resources? We have Hungary, right? The situation there. Prime Minister Viktor Orban, which direction is he going to go? Traditionally, it's he has looked toward Vladimir Putin. President Putin is does that reliance remain intact, or will there be a shift? There has been a shift. He's basically turned his back on Putin when Hungary ratified Finland's accession to NATO. So those are trends we are observing as time goes on. Also, Viktor Orban does not want to lose his EU funds, so he will have to figure out that balance. And truly, sustained success requires sustained strong political leadership across NATO. So among the European member nations and with the United States. We do not want to get into what is happening politically here in the US, but whoever sits in the White House doesn't matter in this whole equation. And of course, it's there is also having this alliance. It's what are the potential benefits come from this? It's can that be that relationship be also further expanded, right? Not just for military purposes and defense purposes, collective defense purposes, but also to advance economic and technological alliances and benefits and collaborations. So what was the European reaction to Finland's NATO membership? Positive, really, truly positive. There was a strong welcome across the continent. And the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, Dmitry Kuleba, used the moment, of course, to advocate for membership of Ukraine in NATO as well. US reaction to Finland's accession, equally positive. I'm going to read your quote. President Biden said, when Putin launched his brutal war of aggression against the people of Ukraine, he thought he could divide Europe and NATO. He was wrong. Today, we're more united than ever, and together, strengthened by our newest ally, Finland, we will continue to preserve transatlantic security, defend every inch of NATO territory, and meet any and all challenges we face. We're going to turn to questions in a minute. I have a few questions for Ambassador Salmimis, but also for me as an Austrian and member of one of the other few neutral, although we debated whether it's really neutral or not, militarily non-aligned countries in Europe. This really resonates with me, what's happening here. And really, it's like watching Finland, right? Taking this big step from military non-alignment and robust self-defense, and it's careful, good neighbor diplomacy, right? To joining this collective defensive force and this very important alliance. So my first question is really, Ambassador Salmimis, you answered a lot of my questions already. Thank you very much in your remarks. But you spoke about what will change for Finland and how the Finns see it. But my question is also, I saw a video of Finnish citizens being interviewed in the streets of Helsinki specifically. And there was a pragmatic response, not entirely enthusiastic, but pragmatic, essentially. Sort of everybody seems to see the sense of this. But here too is like to a nation that's used to, through conscription, right? There's a culture of self-defense and realizing its own vulnerability. What NATO membership, again, is like stepping from being a partner to NATO to being a member of NATO means something else. It means really participating in the defense of others potentially as well, whether that is through financial contribution or really deployments or sharing military equipment, all of this. Do you feel right now everybody's sense is heightened because of the war in Ukraine, but once that hopefully ends at one point, do you think there will be a shift or potentially a shift in Finland and people will think twice about NATO membership?
Thank you, Alexandra. I think it's in my personal opinion, the process of Finland entering NATO, identifying the need and interest, as I referred to, it was a thorough democratic process, and there was a public discussion about it. Because of the history and because what has happened in other parts of neighboring areas to Russia, we of course we know the risk potential. We understand that. At the moment, or also in the foreseeable future, I think if you ask people on the street of Helsinki, I think they would answer that they don't feel threatened. They don't feel that the threat of Russia is imminent. But I think that many of them would say that Finland needs to be alert and we need to be prepared. And for doing this, the best possible move is, of course, what we did. And you referred to the deterrence-based approach of NATO, and also, of course, when there is a talk about even hypothetical talk about using nuclear weapons, of course, the NATO nuclear weapon umbrella has an importance. It's not an easy issue, but I don't see that there would be second thoughts or let's say a political party that would take into their agenda of having a referendum on the NATO membership, which did not happen. We had a democratic process, and for good reasons. It was our parliamentarians who voted vastly, almost unanimously favorable. And we have parties. It's a multi-party system in Finland. We have actually 7 or 8 parties that you can say that they are significant in the meaning that they could be members of the government, and all the parties supported strongly. And so I don't see in the horizon anything that would be, let's say, revisiting the decision.
Good. Let's jump to Russia, the Russian reaction. We have heard, like, there have been the official quote, "It's a dangerous historic mistake that would weaken security in the wider region, increase the risk of conflict, and force Moscow to take countermeasures." That came out of Russia, and other kinds of saber rattling, right? And including bringing greater military presence close to Finland. What are your thoughts about Russia's? You have probably no nation knows Russia better than Finland does. And given the relationship you've had, what are your thoughts about what this means?
Certainly, it's clear that when in the beginning or before the aggression in Ukraine, in December, we heard that the red line is the enlargement of NATO. And that was referred to President Biden's sayings. So, and that is exactly what happened now. Finland has joined NATO, and Sweden will join soon. So, of course, it makes you think: was it the right move from this perspective? Then again, Russia knows Finland. We have had with neighbors you just need to live with. And Finland has been a stable country, stable democracy, also predictable. And we will continue this on this path also as a member of NATO. So, and we don't have any outstanding bilateral territorial disputes or something like that. So I don't believe that Russia, even though then of course they are very unhappy about it, but I don't think that Russia considers Finland as an aggressive threat now after acceding NATO. And I'm sure that we will see at some point more troops because it's a NATO border now. We will see more bases and more troops, and that is of course to be expected at the time, as we know those troops are deployed somewhere else. But so that's more or less how I see the situation.
Yeah, the Russians also saying that they're watching carefully what happens in Finland, right, in terms of military bases, so NATO presence, and want to gauge sort of their response accordingly. It's like, we'll see, but I think we also know it's like that Putin is not so much concerned, as you also said, like about the security that the accession of Finland, but also like NATO really represents. But it's sort of as it impedes his basically feels it's an encroachment, right, on the territories like he would like to expand into, and or maintains like in his quest to rebuild the great Russian Empire. And but yes, it's like like you say, it's like Finland is probably not the first threat he has in mind. The sort of the threat of nuclear retaliation, right, that is being bandied about. So here is like, any thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's of course acceding a military alliance with nuclear weapons and with the strategy of using the deterrence for good reasons. So yes, we see some noises in the background, but even here we haven't seen or heard anything from those sources, from the government sources, that would be the ones that normally should be the heavyweight ones. So and of course it's always troublesome referring to the possibility of using nuclear weapons at some point. And this is of course the reality right now in Europe, that started by Russia making references and also Belarus taking part of that, etc. But again, I think we should not be, let's say, give too much weight for this kind of relatively few comments. And if I have followed and registered correctly, not necessarily from those sources that would be the most serious ones.
Finland and Sweden applied for membership together, right? Like Finland got in first, and the holdup is Turkey. So President Erdogan is like, when do you expect that Finnish membership will be ratified and approved? And what do you think will change President Erdogan's mind?
You mean Swedish membership?
What did I just say? Finnish? Yes, Swedish. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What will get him on board? And also the difference, because I was thinking just like the difference between, right, that Turkey made it specifically, because we're talking about the Kurdish issue here, like the difference between how he saw Finland act on the Kurdish question versus Sweden.
Yes, I think there was based on what was concluded and agreed upon in the Madrid summit and the trilateral discussions among Turkey, Sweden, and Finland. It clarified very much the situation, I think, for Turkey in both from the Finnish and Swedish perspective. Of course, there are significant differences. The Kurdish enclave in Sweden is much bigger, much stronger, much more visible. There are also strong voices in the parliament reflecting the Turkish issues. This is not the case in Finland. We also have Kurdish immigrants and even refugees. But there is a difference. How much did that actually, let's say, mean for Turkey and Erdogan? I cannot say, but I do feel that there are so many things in this pot, so to say, and for Turkey to not go along like the other NATO, other 28 NATO countries did. It still is actually Finland's accession is the fastest in NATO's history, and it would have been, of course, a mega fast without the putting brakes by Turkey and Hungary. And because there are some other interests, that's my personal opinion, and they will have an impact. And of course, we're following the news. It's also about bilateral relations between Turkey and major NATO countries, especially the United States. But having said this, I do believe that it matters that we are in a situation where there is a war in Europe, and I do think that call me an optimist, but I would say I'm wishing and I'm thinking that Sweden will be a member of the alliance by the summit taking place in Vilnius in July.
Good. I'm just looking at the questions that are coming in, and Jerry Green has the same question as actually sort of my next question, and that relates to China opening up to the geopolitical front. Jerry is asking, given China's aspiration to be an Arctic player, is there a Chinese angle to all of this? This is the Arctic one. Let's do the Arctic one, and then we can talk about other aspects of Chinese.
From the Finnish perspective, I think now, as a member of NATO, the security and defense dimension of our Arctic policy will be underscored. It will have a more weight. We have always had the interest to talk about the sustainability, environment issues in the Arctic, but also the livelihoods of the Arctic area and people living, including the indigenous people. But I think it's realism that we will see much more emphasis on security and defense issues in the Finnish Arctic policy. As regards to China, yes, we have, of course, everyone has recognized their growing interest. And there is an angle, I think, at least bilateral relations between Russia and China. How much is there entente between those? How much the partnership allows China to, let's say, have more understanding from the Russian side concerning their motivations in the Arctic area, which are, of course, significant. We're talking about the logistical routes and telecommunication and natural resources and minerals. Yeah, I think this one is interesting. It actually is in, let's say, in the context of the partnership in general. My personal feeling is that the rivalry between China and Russia has not faded away. It still is there. They are, and at least if you think two big powers, superpowers in the area, and we're talking about also the natural resources, and we're talking about minerals, etc. So I wouldn't overplay that in general. And of course, what is for Europe the most important issue vis-a-vis China in general is if China starts supporting Russia with lethal weapons, which we don't have any proof yet about it. We know that some kind of support there is, but not necessarily hardware.
Yeah, we spoke about that. Yes, that concern is like how that could change the playing field for Europe and what that means if China starts to provide tactical support to Russia. Yeah. And here too, the calculation, right? Like, I mean, we know that the United States has a different relationship with China than pretty much the rest of the world does, that who have a more pragmatic and if maybe strategic sort of approach, different because they're not a world power, so there are different requirements in place. Germany is like has a strong trading relationship with China, does not really want to give this up. So here too, and it's not the only countries like France, it's like etc. It's like what does it mean really truly when we look at sort of Europe and the sort of the division between the priorities that come out of the United States with regards to China, and then how Europe positions itself if China comes in, right, providing lethal support. How could that play out?
Well, I actually would put this into the picture, which is for me at least an extremely important one. Yes, we talked earlier about the goals of President Putin, and he wanted to see Ukraine that surrenders and is submissive, and he got a resisting and united Ukraine, and he wanted to have a divided Europe and divided West, and he got a united Europe and also a very stronger transatlantic relationship. But the thing is that this unity is being tested, and the pressure will grow. And of course, I do see that you cannot decouple this the unity and the continuation of the support from United States and China rivalry. I think it is there, and it is of course a reality, especially for United States, how much they can in the future invest and how much is attention and also resources needed on the in the opposite geographic sphere. Yeah. But I think that Europe and United States, they do, even though there is this pressure growing, and also you referred to some let's say worries and even being opposite to some import of grain from Ukraine to some European countries. I think it is a existential issue, and this has been recognized by the political leaders, and I'm extremely convinced that this is being shared on both sides of the Atlantic. Whatever is needed, it's actually then needs to be produced, and it needs to be performed. And it might, of course, there might be a more, let's say, intensive discussions in the European Union and also elsewhere.
Yeah, it requires a careful diplomatic balancing act to keep everybody together. What do you think about China's proposal to mediate the conflict between Russia and Ukraine?
I think it's, and I of course consider that the Chinese knew that it's a non-starter because it does not take into account the stand of Ukraine, and so it was. Of course, it is in the context with their proposals globally in the UN, but also otherwise, and it is a part of the bigger game, and in China's interest to increase the support of the developing countries, but also emerging economies. The BRIC countries. I think it's. It doesn't have any realistic chances as such to be taken forward, but it's understandable that they want to signal that they are there if needed, if there is a possibility to talk about ending the conflict.
Yeah, I think everybody's intent on ending this conflict, because here too is like China is a pragmatic player. It's like economically, it's not good. And also China does not want to find itself at opposite sides from Europe, major trading partner, and the United States is like helping out Russia. So everybody is like on the world stage has a careful balance to strike here. One question came in also: how would Finland respond to Russia's plans of more militarization of the border region? And I would like to add that really sort of potentially increased militarization of the Arctic. So it's like looking at really sort of the whole, encircling it in a way.
Yeah, I think I referred to the not only possibility, but it's more than possible that Russia will increase their troops and their intensity close to the Finnish border. So this is to be expected. It is what we don't consider that as such. It's something that we should feel let's say reacting to their reaction, but they know the Finnish capacity and capabilities, and of course they are interestingly following what does that mean now in practical terms of us being the member of NATO. So I think it's something that already has changed the scene, and we will see in future what are the changes in detail.
There's a long-standing relationship, right, between Finland and Russia. It's like, and Finland has been a good neighbor and a mindful neighbor of Russia. So here's like, I can imagine that there are conversations that continue, right? That Finland doesn't want to abandon this. It's, like you said, right? It's not against somebody. Yeah, that it's not a hostile act, no matter how sort of the official pronouncements of the Russian government are. But still, it's like Finland is intent on keeping good relation with its neighbors. Like, are there back channel conversations going on? You think it's like something like, yes, we are a member of NATO now, but still, it's like we have no bad intentions, or we would like to maintain the relationship we've had. What's happening in that arena?
Yeah, well, I made a reference to the history of our bilateral relations, which have also at some point meant war and aggression. We have, of course, learned to live with before Soviet Union and then Russia, but at some point this relationship has been very difficult one and troublesome. And now what has happened because of Russia's aggression to Ukraine, it's not in the foreseeable future that this will kind of make it possible to have a relationship that we used to have with them. Our trade with Russia was peaking at some point. It was during the Soviet Union, it was more than 20%, and now after Soviet Union collapsed, it was peaking with Russia. I think it was 14 or 15%. Now it's close to zero, and we don't see anything. There's no trust for Finnish companies or from the Finnish government. At the same time, there is this the common border. There are some issues that need to be dealt anyway, because there are families that live on both sides of the border. Of course, we have, as a member of the European Union, we have minimized the tourism and the traffic across the border. But as said, there's not in the foreseeable future that there would be a possibility to have a change for better. And of course, supporting strongly Ukraine and being part of the Western alliance, that is priority number one for us.
Yeah, for good reason. For you as a Finnish citizen, also looking from the outside, what are your thoughts personally, your concerns, your thoughts, your hopes?
Well, I'm not only a Finnish diplomat, but also I have done my military service. My sons have done the military service, and for us, it's an issue that I come again back to the history. But the family stories in my own family, they are have a significant importance to my thinking, and for us, for example, many of my friends here asked when the aggression started that, so you had 3 kids in Finland, so you probably are trying to get them to United States. I then explained them, actually, no, there's this idea for us that we don't feel provocated, but we are prepared and we are alert, and part of that being is that we are also ready to defend our country, and that means that people also are willing to do so. I refer to the strong will and motivation of Finns to defend their country. So it's something that is very strong there in the background, and it's I would say a Finnish way thinking of issues pragmatically, and I think that is what we need to be doing in these kind of times.
Yeah, I can see that. And we'll see how everything unfolds. It's like the next step is for Sweden to become a member. And then what is going to happen with Ukraine? Do we think that Ukraine will become a member of NATO?
It's of course a very a difficult issue, but a very pertinent question to be addressed. But I think we need, at this point, we need to be focusing on securing the support for Ukraine. And of course, the aspirations for both to become a European Union member and also NATO member, they are there. But we do know that geography plays a role, and we know that history plays a role. So it's a very complicated issue, and I'm sure that Ukrainians know that as well.
Yeah, and I think EU membership is first, probably. But
yes.
He, again, like President Putin has achieved the opposite effect of what he wanted, what he intended. And yeah, that's again, like you say, right? There's history, geography, and events that pull all of us in different directions. We are out of questions. That means our audience is satisfied. No more open thoughts. And I want to thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful conversation. And
thank you, Alexandra.
Congratulations to Finland.
Thank you very much. And I thank also, again, Pacific Council for organizing this. And if anyone from the audience considers that they might still want to ask something, feel free to contact me, and happy to continue this discussion on a bilateral level, and extremely happy for having the honor of participating in this discussion. Thank you very much.
And all the best and wonderful time to the delegation that's traveling to Finland. It'll be wonderful.
Exactly.
And then
Yes.
we look forward to hearing the reports when everybody's back.
Very
Good.
much so.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.